Now we'll move on to co-transport. Co-transport is the coupled movement, हमेशा couple में move करेंगे, not single, of substances across a cell membrane via carrier protein. Two things. It's a coupled movement through carrier protein. It involves a combination of facilitated diffusion when we talk about carrier protein, and it also involves a fusion of active transport when we talk about ATP usage. So ये use भी कर रहा है carrier protein. It's not even going alone, it's going with someone through a carrier protein by facilitated diffusion and active transport as well by the use of energy from adenosine triphosphate. A well-known example of a co-transported protein can be found on the cell surface membrane of the epithelial cells lining the mammalian ileum. This specific co-transport protein is involved in the absorption of glucose. Sodium ions and glucose molecules are transported into the epithelial cells via facilitated diffusion. Glucose कैसे absorb होगा? Glucose would be coupled with sodium ions and then move in to facilitated diffusion through a carrier protein. The facilitated diffusion can only continue if a concentration gradient is maintained. The active transport of sodium ions out of the cell into the blood help to maintain this gradient. The glucose molecule exit the epithelial cell with the sodium ions and enter the blood via facilitated diffusion through the carrier protein. Co-transport किसके साथ हो रहे हैं? With the sodium ions. Now look at this. ये आपके पास epithelial cell है, the pink one, and this dark pink one is the capillary. Okay, right. The carrier protein we're going to talk about is named sodium potassium pump. This sodium potassium pump is the carrier protein that we're going to discuss, and this is the glucose channel protein. दो proteins की बात हो रही है, glucose channel protein and a sodium potassium carrier pump. Movement कहाँ से होनी? From epithelial cells to the blood, जो कि capillary में run कर रहा है. Two processes are taking place. अब होता क्या है? This is a sodium dependent glucose carrier protein. Why is it sodium dependent? Because when sodium is going to enter, only then it is going to open the carrier protein, and glucose would also be coupled with sodium and only allowed to enter then. Once it is entered, दोनों अपने अपने रास्ते वापस, they again separate because the work is done. Co-transport हो चुकी है. Now we don't need sodium ions. तो sodium ions अपना exit कर जाते हैं from their sodium potassium pump, and glucose go from their channel protein. But in order to let glucose pass to the first stage, we need sodium ions in the lumen of small intestine. Baki through the maintenance of the gradient is done by the sodium potassium pump. ये क्या करता है? ये दो पोटेशियम इन करता है and throws out 3 sodium out. तो इस तरह आपका एक gradient भी maintain रहता है and this facilitated diffusion keeps taking place.